This is Midrash Tanchuma, Parshat Eikev, entitled When the Jews Threw Away Paradise. So we're talking here in an amazing what-if situation. We know that Moshe broke the first luchot when he saw what was going on in with the golden calf. But the Midrash speculates what would have happened if there was no sin of the golden calf and Moshe didn't break the first luchot. There would be a completely different reality. In fact, there's a three-way machlokas of what that reality would have been. One opinion says there would have been sovereignty that never ended. In other words, the Jewish state would have started at the time of Moshe and going till today. No galut. The second is immortality, which means that we would be a huge number, probably making the Chinese look like a small nation. And the third one is no afflictions, a life without afflictions. Interestingly enough, the Midrash sees that somehow the Jews were cognizant of this potential elevated state, and they rejected it. They say, even if we have to go lose our sovereignty, we don't want this. Kind of crazy, right? And what was Moshe's reaction to this outrage? Interestingly enough, Moshe was, as usual, tremendously loyal. So he threw down the luchos so he could say to Hashem, I am throwing my lot with the Jewish people. If you want to forgive me for what I just did, you have to forgive them. If you don't forgive them, then erase me from your book. That was Moshe's reaction. So the Kol HaRemez, a commentary, makes a very interesting observation, because after Moshe is told, okay, now you're going to have to chisel a second set of 10 Commandments from stone. The question is, why is Moshe given this arduous task to chisel out new commandments? The Kol HaRebbe says something fascinating, because another aspect of the reality that would have been under the first luchot was that people would absorb Torah like inhaling. No study, no working things out, no difficulty trying to explain it. You hear it, you got it, you absorbed it. And of course, no feeling of accomplishment that you struggled and worked something out, because it's all instantaneous. That was the reality of the first set of luchot. Now that we're going to have to study Torah and wrestle with this in order to get it, so Moshe was told, okay, we're going to start with you. You're going to get a feeling of how hard it's going to be now compared to what would have been. Start chiseling. And that's why Moshe was told to start chiseling. So now let's try to understand, so why did the Jews reject it? Was it just the relationship was going, so fast and they weren't ready for it? That's certainly one possibility. There is a minority opinion that Adam HaRishon thought that there wasn't enough challenge in his life in the Gan Eden, and he purposely ate from the forbidden fruit so that he would have a more challenging life. It was just too dull over there. It was no challenge, one commandment and nothing else to do. Perhaps that's the reason, although when you look at the history of the Jewish people in the desert for the 40 years, they seem to flunk many tests, so I don't know if that's really a proper answer. And the Midrash, though, does come up with something. The Midrash uses a beautiful quote famous quote from Kohelet, right? That says, "L'kol zman ve'es l'chol chefetz tachas hashamayim." There's a time and a season for every experience under the heavens, and it goes on to list. There was a time for Avraham Avinu to appear on the scene. There was a time for Noach to appear on the scene. There was a time for a flood. There was a time to go to Mitzrayim. There was a time to get out of Mitzrayim. So there's a time for everything. Now, interestingly enough, then the Midrash reverts back to the actual words and does something very creative. And it says, Eish lashlich avanim ve'eis kenos avanim. Time to throw stones. That is meant to be the time when Moshe had to throw down the luchot. Eis leknos avanim, time to gather stones. That is when Moshe has to take the new slab of stone and start carving out. So what does that mean, carving out the second set? What does that mean? Perhaps it means the Midrash is saying, you want to know why this happened? Don't sweat it. It was meant to be. And if I had to add anything, a major theme in the Midrash is always that you need challenges in this world, and if you think of what life would have been like, you need to have free will. God goes to great lengths to maintain free will. Imagine if the Jews were living under any of those first three scenarios that I mentioned, immortality, sovereignty, or without affliction. So they would look around and say, wow, we have this tremendous uplifted relationship with God. No one else does. This might interfere with their free will, because they would say, okay, something special going on here. I should keep the Torah, because God's presence is very overt. But that's, in a way, not a way to maintain free will. So, and then, of course, the other nations of the world will look at the Jews and say, wow, look at, they're living on a different plane of reality with their immortality and sovereignty and, and no afflictions. Perhaps that would put pressure on the non-Jews to convert. And that, again, would interfere with free will. So I would venture to guess that God did not want to mess with free will, and therefore God said this was not meant to be. So it didn't really matter what the Jews thought they were rejecting it and why. It was not meant to be. Have a great Shabbos.